North Star by Manuela Spadea, MD. There are two faces that live in my heart. One I carry with sorrow, and the other with profound relief. Two young girls, two mothers, and two moments in time shape the very marrow of who I am as a pediatric oncologist. Their stories taught me about the sacred weight of trust, the language of love spoken in hospital rooms, and the unbearable, beautiful vulnerability of being a North Star for a child with cancer. We never call it that, of course. Not in rounds, not in protocols, but that is what we become, a fixed point in a collapsing sky. When nothing else makes sense, numbers fail and outcomes blur, they look to us, not because we promise survival, but because we promise we will not leave. Because in the storm of uncertainty, a child needs one person who remains still. Eva returned to us quietly. She had been through so much already. Transplants, setbacks, and the slow erosion of normalcy that childhood cancer so ruthlessly brings. She was a teenager with old eyes, still so young, but already fluent in the language of suffering. Her leukemia had come back, again, and this time she seemed to understand more than she said aloud. Shortly after her second transplant, her body began to betray her. Her blood pressure rose, her kidneys faltered, her platelets dropped. We suspected transplant-associated thrombotic microangiopathy. Treatment began quickly, but there was a sense among us, like an unspoken knowing, that we were no longer ahead of the curve. And then came the seizures. Her words slurred, then stopped. Her gaze became distant. The magnetic resonance imaging confirmed what her body had already told us. A storm was raging in her brain. She was slipping further away with each hour. Her consciousness waned, and with it, a little more of the Eva we had come to know and care for. Even near the end, she still called for me, a grace that made me acutely aware of my smallness. Her voice, when it could still speak, always carried my name. Her mother, a quiet, deeply spiritual woman, never raised her voice, never demanded. But she would gently ask the nurses, sometimes even in the middle of the night, "Is her doctor here?" as if invoking a prayer. And so I came, even when I was not on call, even when I had nothing new to offer. I came because they believed in me, and because a part of me could not bear the thought of her asking and finding no one. They don't teach you how to endure that in medical school. They do not explain what it feels like to watch a child fade slowly, day after day, or how every goodbye is really a little death of your own. A part of me went with her, not all at once, but in pieces, moment by moment. The last night I saw Eva, she was unconscious. Her mother sat by her side, wrapped in a stillness so profound it felt like it came from another world. She looked up as I entered and said, "She waited for you." I took Eva's hand and whispered, "I'm here." That moment changed me. I've carried the weight of her death like a stone in my chest, not because I made a mistake, but because I didn't want to let her go. Because even in her final hours, she reached out for me, and I had only my presence to give. It taught me that presence, not answers, is what a teen truly needs. Not long after, Cecilia arrived. She was 9 years old, full of light, wonder, and questions, a child who loved drawing and singing, who had already known too much fear. Her leukemia had returned, and we were preparing her for chimeric antigen receptor T-cell therapy. Her mother, a senior internist from another hospital, met me during my first month as a consultant. I was young, insecure. I felt like a child pretending to be a doctor. Cecilia decorated the intravenous pole with glitter stars, and after I traced Polaris on the ceiling, she called me the Doctor of the Stars. Before procedures, she drew and I named whale, comet, lighthouse. Then nurses taped each one to the bed rail like a banner of courage. She measured time in drawings, not days. When Cecilia's condition worsened with neurotoxicity, I was haunted by every decision. She stopped speaking. Her bright energy dulled. I followed every protocol to the letter, but every night I left the hospital carrying a private terror. What if I was not enough? What if the daughter of this experienced colleague did not survive under my watch? I second-guessed every decision I made, doubting myself. But Cecilia's mother never doubted me. She stayed steady, calm, and kind. She read my eyes when I tried to mask fear. Her unconditional faith in me helped me find my footing. And then one morning, Cecilia spoke, just a whisper, my name, and then a phrase we both knew. Where did the comet go? We laughed and cried simultaneously. It circled back, I said. It never left. And we knew we were walking back toward the light. She recovered. She returned to school. And to this day, her mother writes to me to share test scores, holiday cards, and photos from dance recitals. Every message is a reminder that medicine is not just about rescue. It's also about connection. In both Eva's and Cecilia's journeys, I was not the most experienced doctor in the hospital. I was not the one who had written the protocol they were enrolled in or published the paper that dramatically shifted their chances. But I was the one who stayed, the one they chose. Incredibly, this is both a gift and a responsibility. Being a North Star for a child with cancer is work for which there is no yardstick. It's not about knowledge. It's not about bravery. It's about presence. It's about being the constant and the familiar face in a revolving door of strangers. It's about returning again and again, especially when all that remains is to be there and witness. Children with cancer live in a world that is often incomprehensible. They lose their hair, they stop counting days to a planned holiday, and instead wait for the day of the last chemotherapy. They miss birthday parties and dance classes. They stop kissing their puppies. But what they hold on to are the people who make them feel seen. The people who never forget who they were before the tubes and lines. And the people who remind them, even silently, that they are still children and teens, still themselves. Eva taught me to honor the sacred space of farewell. Cecilia taught me how to lead in the presence of my own fear. Their mothers taught me what trust looks like when it is absolute and quiet and unconditional. There are still nights when I lie awake and wonder whether I was enough. But then I remember the warmth of Eva's hand, the sound of Cecilia's voice returning, and the words from their mothers that I still carry. I was their North Star, and they were mine.
Welcome back to JCO's Cancer Stories, the Art of Oncology. This ASCO podcast features intimate narratives and perspectives from authors exploring their experiences in oncology. I'm your host, Mikkael Sekeres. I'm professor of medicine and chief of the Division of Hematology at the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center, University of Miami. What a pleasure it is to have joining us today Manuela Spadea, an assistant professor of pediatrics at the University of Turin in Italy and consultant oncologist at the Regina Margherita Children's Hospital in Turin, Italy. We will discuss her Journal of Clinical Oncology article and second place winner in our narrative medicine contest, North Star. At the time of this recording, our guest has no disclosures. We have agreed to address each other by first names. Manuela, thank you for contributing to the Journal of Clinical Oncology and to our narrative medicine contest, and especially for joining us to discuss your winning article today.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure and an honor being invited to speak with you.
No, the pleasure and honor is mine, I promise. You know, on these podcasts, I often like to ask our guests to tell us something about yourself. Where are you from? And walk us through your career and where you are right now.
Sure. I'm from Italy. I work in Turin, where I work as a consultant pediatrician, a consultant oncologist, and also as an assistant professor of pediatrics. So my work is divided in these two duties: clinical duties on one hand, and on the other hand, the research and also teaching activities. I was drawn to choose pediatric oncology because this sits at the intersection of science and humanity, in my opinion, of course. I think that in pediatric oncology, we face different and several challenges. So we need to perform at our best in diagnosis, treatment, and whatever, but also we are asked to do not forget being human and to connect always with our children and their families. So it was basically this intersection, this connection between science, research on one end, and humanity and heart on the other hand, that led me to what I am today.
It's a fantastic explanation. And it's interesting how you frame that there's an aspect of arts and humanities that you found in focusing on pediatric hematology oncology. Do you think that's more so than what we face in adult oncology?
I think that it's kind of different because if you think about our word and you think about a sentence, just putting the words child, cancer, and death in the same sentence is very hard to think about. Adult, it's someone that has already had the chance and the gift to grow up.
Huh. It's an interesting perspective on it.
Yeah. A child is someone who is growing up, and cancer stays in between. Is a possibility to become an adult or not.
So the emotional burden right out of the gate of having a child with cancer and the possibility of death and the reaction to the compromise of a full life and the shortening of a full life, I automatically invokes that extra step of humanity and arts and how we have to approach a medical situation. I hadn't heard somebody put that into a concise phrase like that before, but you're absolutely right. When did you start writing narrative pieces?
I started writing when I was an adolescent, basically, and writing for me was a way to cope with whatever kind of feeling I felt during my life and during what I experienced as a human beforehand. But thereafter, when I became a clinician, writing was a way to cope with difficult shift or hard nights in which you are asked to take very hard decisions as clinician.
Often, either on this podcast or outside of it, doctors will approach me and want to get into writing and write a piece. And I think what many people don't realize is it is entirely possible later in life to start writing and to be very skilled at it. But many of our authors for JCO's Art of Oncology, though, have been writing their entire lives. It's not like they woke up one morning and decided, today I'm going to write and I'm going to write creatively. We've all been working on it for decades.
Sure.
I wonder, who are some of your favorite authors, or are there writers who've influenced your own writing?
I would go with Paulo Coelho and Alda Merini, and reasons are very different because from Paulo Coelho, I learned how to express life as a journey and how to use and exploit, of course, symbolic images to express what we want to tell to our readers. From Alda Merini, I learned that pain and suffering are worthy of being mentioned, and they still deserve a place in our writings. And she taught me how to collocate, how to find the right place and the right words to express pain and suffering that are parts of our life, of course, in pediatric oncologists, of course, and are worthy being expressed in a manner that can reach our readers and touch them.
Well, as you have beautifully in your essay, I wonder if you could give us an example of a symbolic image.
For example, referring my essay, The North Star, I chose the North Star because it's a very important image because it recalls us about being a fixed point in a collapsing world. Basically, it's the world of our children that is collapsing, and you are the one who represents these fixed points, this anchor.
So, in your essay, which our entire editorial staff just loved, you write about, and I'm going to quote you to you, which is always a little bit awkward, but here I go. You write about the unbearable, beautiful vulnerability of being a North Star for a child with cancer. And you write, we never call it that, of course, not in rounds, not in protocols, but that is what we become, a fixed point in a collapsing sky. When nothing else makes sense, when numbers fail and outcomes blur, they look to us, not because we promise survival, but because we promise we won't leave. Wow. I mean, that's an incredible collection of sentences. I wonder, in our relationships with our patients, when does that happen? When do we become a North Star?
I think that we become a North Star when our patient experience our humanity, because they can trust us not only for our degrees or our experience as clinicians, physicians, researchers, whatsoever. They trust us as North Star when they feel that we are empathetic with them, when they know that we are feeling what they are experiencing. And so they leave their feelings to us, they share their feelings, they begin to connect with us.
When does that happen in the timeline of when we meet a patient? Is that something that can happen at our very first meeting where a patient may identify us or a member of our team as their North Star? Or is that something that only happens over time as we build trust and build empathy?
It's definitely something that happens over time, day by day. Sometimes, but only occasionally, in my opinion, it can happen on the very first days. For example, the days in which we give them the diagnosis. But these are only small occasions, because in the majority of cases, in my experience, the trust is built day by day.
There are also times that doesn't happen, though, right? What are those scenarios like when either patients don't need us to be a North Star or when that deep connection never happens?
I think that these are very challenging situations. It can happen when outcomes blur, of course, because sometimes patients are experiencing too much suffering and they can't share with us because they are not able of sharing with us their feelings. Sometimes it's just because you are not their North Star. Sometimes it's unexplicable, basically. I don't trust you not because you are not what I'm looking for, but because I don't feel I can trust you. And I don't know how to explain because I can't trust you.
It's interesting. It's complicated to develop that relationship where you become a North Star. It's sounds like what you're saying is it's a combination of trust, first and foremost, honesty, attentiveness to a patient's needs, and time.
Sure.
In your piece, you write about a couple of patients you've treated, Eva and Cecilia, and you write, in both Eva's and Cecilia's journeys, I was not the most experienced doctor in the hospital. I wasn't the one who had written the protocol they were enrolled in or published the paper that dramatically shifted their chances, but I was the one who stayed, the one they chose. Incredibly, this is both a gift and a responsibility. There's a lot in those sentences, Manuela. You give patients the agency to identify us as a North Star, not us. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I think that there is a word in pediatric oncology that could be used as recurrent, and this word is impossible. Why I chose this word? Because we live impossible diagnosis. Let's be honest. Impossible diagnosis, impossible suffering, impossible losses. When you face the impossible, being a North Star without being burned out by this, it's accepting that you are going to face uncertainty, just being present. because you are not the one that will change the outcome, or you can't be sure that that child will have the chance to survive. So if you give the possibility to face the uncertainty, being sure that whenever it goes, you can just be present for your patient and remember every day to your patient that you are there for them. So basically you win. And on the other hand, you also need to protect yourself, because being a North Star is a responsibility, as I wrote, and a responsibility can be overwhelming for the one who is responsible for that child. So in that case, the only thing that can protect you is taking the part of being a North Star with boundaries. So you should also try to maintain your objectivity as a clinician and protect that objectivity that allow you to also serve as a good clinician.
So I wonder if I could follow up on that a little bit. It's a lot of work to be a North Star, isn't it? I mean, we have to choose our words and our actions so very carefully when we're in a room with a patient and that patient's family. Do you think serving as a North Star contributes to burnout, or is it actually the opposite? It keeps our work vibrant and real?
Good question. I think that it's both, indeed. I think that burning out comes not by being a North Star, by being a North Star in isolation, without caring about yourself, without trying a way to cope with your grief, with your sense of fear, because we are human. So it's basically we experience these feelings. I mean, if we don't have a way to cope and to protect our feelings, we can absolutely go into burnout. On the other hand, it can be very important thing for our work, because it can give our work the possibility to be vibrant and real, because we are allowed to take the journey of our patient in a moment in which their journey is very unbearable. This is also not only a responsibility, but also a very important place that we have in their lives. This is very beautiful for me. This is astonishing, because we are allowed to enter our patient lives in a very difficult moments. We can walk with them, basically being present and walking through what cancer journeys reserves to them.
Well, I think that's a lovely place to end our podcast. What a real pleasure it has been to have Manuela Spadea, who is an assistant professor of pediatrics at the University of Turin, Italy, and consultant oncologist at the Regina Margherita Children's Hospital in Turin, Italy, to discuss her essay, North Star. Manuela, thank you so much for submitting your article both to JCO and to our contest, and for joining us today.
Thank you, Mikkael. It's been an honor to share their stories with you.
If you've enjoyed this episode, consider sharing it with a friend or colleague, or leave us a review. Your feedback and support helps us continue to have these important conversations. If you're looking for more episodes in context, follow our show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and explore more from ASCO at asco.org/podcasts. Until next time, this has been Mikkael Sekeres for JCO Cancer Stories, The Art of Oncology.
The purpose of this podcast is to educate and to inform. This is not a substitute for professional medical care and is not intended for use in the diagnosis or treatment of individual conditions. Guests on this podcast express their own opinions, experience, and conclusions. Guest statements on the podcast do not express the opinions of ASCO. The mention of any product, service, organization, activity, or therapy should not be construed as an ASCO endorsement.